the Goldendale Sky Village on episode 372 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who likes going out under the stars. So this morning, today, we have Bill and Christopher joining us from the Goldendale Sky Village. Actually, Christopher is in San Diego, and Bill, I think you're up in Seattle, I think you said. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show, guys. Really great to have you this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Should be fun. We're really interested here. This is the first time we've talked to people about a sky village, but it's not the first people that we've had listening to the show that are involved in one of the sky villages. I think we have people from a couple of the other ones involved, but it's something that I'm quite interested in. I bought my own dark site a couple of years ago now, and kind of know a little bit of the trials and tribulations about doing that, but it's just sort of my own property. But I always thought it would be really cool to be involved in one of these. So maybe what we'll do to get started, folks, is maybe we'll start with Christopher. If you can tell us about your background and interest in amateur astronomy, and then we'll go to Bill. So yeah, if you can just give us a bit of a rundown how you became interested in astronomy and what you like doing in the astronomical community.
Well, I was born and raised in England, as you can probably tell by my accent. And when I was 13 years old, I went to a boarding school, and in the house I stayed at, in the backyard, there was an observatory, which was built in 1878, and it was a 9.25-inch refractor, and that was quite something to have in the backyard.
Wow!
So I started using it. It was open all the time whenever I wanted to use it, and really got to enjoy seeing the stars. Not very dark place, but it was quite a large telescope. And I remember once when I was a teenager, Sir Patrick Moore came by to visit, and I gave him a tour of the observatory.
Wow!
Showed him my drawings of sunspots and things like that. So about the same time, my father gave me a telescope, a small 4-inch reflector, and started a subscription to Astronomy magazine, which was just starting right then. And so that's what really got me into it. When I was in college, I went to a college where there was a planetarium. This was in Alabama now. And so I put on planetarium shows for students. And so I didn't really start getting into it seriously, though, until about 10 years ago, when I got a much bigger telescope and started imaging. So that's the background.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, what do you know? What kind of telescope that 9+ inch aperture was? Was it just like a Cook or something like that, or do you remember what?
I don't know what make it was. I remember that the tube was made out of papier mâché.
Okay.
And it had brass knobs coming off it, all different directions. And you can see a photograph of it if you Google Rugby School Observatory. There's some pictures of it if you want to take a look at what something like that looks like.
Rugby School
Observatory.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Rugby School Temple Observatory, and it was opened in 1878.
So it's in Warwickshire. I spent a summer in Coventry. I don't think that's too far.
Well, that's just down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite is it still around, or?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm sure it is. Be around.
It's incredible.
For 100 years.
Yeah, I just got the historical image here.
Mm-hmm.
Very neat. Might be a Clark.
I'd be interested to know, because I never really thought about, who made it, but assuming that the Victorians have, moved on, things have moved on since then.
Yeah. It actually says it's a Clark. That's So yeah, that'd be a pretty good little scope, to
Yeah.
say the least. Very cool. Very cool. And so you said you're imaging now. Do you still look through the telescopes or primarily just the imaging, Christopher?
I primarily do the imaging, but I haven't done a lot in the last couple of years. I've been focused on building the Sky Village. It's taken a lot of my time, but yeah, I still get to image either from Goldendale or from home whenever I can. Yeah.
Neat. And what are you imaging with?
I have a Williams Optics 91 telescope with a one of those harmonic mounts and a CCD camera QSI 683. So that's what I'm imaging with now. I used to have I still have a Teleview 127 IS with a AP Mark One mount, but that was getting pretty heavy to lug around, so I decided to get more portable.
Yeah. And what sort of objects that'd be a pretty good wide field setup, but I know a lot of people are able to do different things with these small telescopes now.
Yeah, I've been imaging sort of deep sky objects like galaxies and nebula and things like that. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm still not very good at it. I'm trying hard though.
It, it's
Uh,
funny. I always hear that from many astro imagers. Yeah. Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, I didn't really have anything to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I thought I was cutting you off there. All right, maybe we'll transition over to Bill and get a bit of your background in amateur astronomy and where you're coming from, Bill. If you can just give us that bit of a rundown.
Certainly. I grew up in a farm in central Iowa, in the central U.S.,
Okay.
and it had fairly dark skies at that time. Not so much anymore, unfortunately. But when I was in high school, I actually built my own telescope. Good old Edmund Scientific, how to build a telescope, a 4.25 inch mirror. I actually bought the mirror rather than try to grind it myself, but it was mainly built out of parts lying around the farm, pipes, for example, and uh, stovepipe that would be used in a furnace. And so I actually built it, put it together myself, and got quite interested in observing then. So interested that when I went to college, I got a degree in physics,
Oh,
physics and math. Only taught school for a year. Teaching was not my cup of tea. So then I eventually moved to Seattle here. And I was reading Sky and Telescope a couple of years ago, and Christopher had written an article on the very last page of Sky and Telescope about Goldendale Sky Village. It got me interested. So I bought into the village. So I wasn't one of the founding members, but bought into it. And now I've actually built an observatory in Goldendale Sky Village. But I live in Seattle in the probably undoubtedly light polluted skies here.
cool. And so, how did that first telescope work out? Have you built other telescopes, or what are you observing with now?
I'm observing with a couple of Celestrons. So I've got a Celestron 11-inch edge that I will actually put in the observatory in Goldendale. It's really too heavy to be pulled out here in Seattle. And then here in Seattle, I use a Celestron 8-inch. I have a couple other telescopes, but the Celestron 8-inch is my go-to for putting out on my deck and observing in Seattle, like I say, in the light polluted skies. I also recently acquired a little Sea Star, a 50 millimeter S50, which is relatively new from ZWO.
Okay.
It's really more than a toy. I've actually wrote a review of it, which I'll publish here today or tomorrow. But it's more than a toy for imaging. But I'm strictly a visual observer at this time. Eventually, we'll probably get into more imaging.
All right. Good stuff. So maybe we'll slowly move on to the Sky Village. And it sounds like Christopher, it sounds like you were one of the prime movers in this project. Is it something that you began to investigate on your own, or is it something that that you were working with others on from the very start?
I started basically on my own. What happened was that Stephanie Anderson, who was the president of the Seattle Astronomical Society back in 2016, she's also one of the co-owners of Cloudbreak Optics, which is a telescope store in Seattle. So she, in 2016, asked me to take over the chairmanship, if you like, of the Dark Skies Committee of the Seattle Astronomical Society, or the SAS. And that committee had about 10 people on it. And I said, great, I'd love to do that. And so I spent the next 2 years looking for a suitable dark sky site for the SAS. And I looked in two basic different places. One was an hour and a half from Seattle, and the other one was 3.5 hours from Seattle. And trying to see the advantages and disadvantages of being close or further out. And over that 2 years, I saw probably about 100 properties that were for sale. And um, and also over the 2 years, the effort kind of morphed from an SAS project to a private project. And in 2018, I found these 30 acres of perfect land in near Goldendale. As soon as I saw it, I thought this would work very nicely. I had all the requisites of, portal to sky, and low horizons and no neighbors, and very suitable, good access, all the things you want in a dark sky site.
And about how far from Seattle is that? Because you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you reside in or near Seattle yourself. Is that?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
just traveling right now, but I live in Seattle, and it's about if depending on whether you keep the speed limit. I've gotten there in 3 hours, but it usually takes about 3.5 hours to get there, which is just on the edge of doability. If it's much further, it'd be hard for a weekend to go out there, but the roads are all good, so it's pretty clear shot.
So do most astronomers, when they head out there, spend multiple nights at the site?
It varies.
Yeah.
I've been out there and come back the same day and not
Oh,
spent
wow.
anything at all, depending on what had to be done. But
Yeah.
other people can spend a week or even a couple of weeks, and if you have an RV, there's no limit how long you can spend there.
So you mentioned 30 acres. How is that subdivided? If somebody was buying a plot, how large of an area do you end up with?
All right. Well, this is where I need to make a very important distinction. You don't buy plots or lots in this village.
Okay.
What you do, it's an LLC, and its purpose is to own, operate, and preserve a dark sky site from where we have members, and their guests can visually observe and image the universe. So what you do is you buy shares in the LLC, and right now there's a minimum of 2 shares for membership. And in return for your shareholder status, you get the right to use land uh, at the village. And there's a ratio. One share, for each share you buy, you get the right to use 2,500 square feet of land, which is a 50 by 50, So if you get 2 shares, that's about 71 by 71 feet. And that's big enough to park an RV and put a telescope pad on and hang out without feeling too cramped. But you don't buy shares. You don't buy land, you buy shares, and so that's what makes it really work very nicely.
And is that, I have to ask a question about this. This seems like a really good deal. Is that like sort of forever, like in perpetuity, or is it like 2,500 for 2 shares every 10 years, or is it a
No,
forever
it's
kind of
it's considered part of your state, these shares, and so it's forever. And when you pass on, you can pass it on to your next of kin, your heirs, and they can use it. So it's forever. Unless you sell them, you can sell shares too.
Neat. And is there any kind of, like you mentioned, you could put down a pad? I notice on the website it mentions potentially building an observatory. Is there any kind of restrictions as to what can be, I guess, maybe permanently established?
No, you can build anything you like on your land, as long as you don't encroach on your neighbor's sky. So there's a rule about, like Bill, for instance. Bill has built his own observatory over there. He's one of like 3 or 4 observatories there now, and so people put concrete pads on their land. They build observatories. They put little, we call them shelter cabins, which can't be any larger than 120 square feet, and according to county regulations. And so, it's fun to see the village grow over time as it has.
Yeah, I think this is a great concept, especially to get a bunch of like-minded people together, to preserve the night sky. I think it's a wonderful idea. Is there also then sort of lighting regulations or policies or anything like that to help preserve the sky at night?
Yeah, it's like any star party you go to. It's you don't go around, shining white light anywhere. You have to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our red light enforcer. One of our members goes around.
I'm getting an image of a guy walking around with a baseball bat.
Yeah. His day job is a clinical psychologist, so he's perfect.
He's very convincing, eh?
Yeah.
What's also kind of interesting here is Goldendale, which is about 10 miles away, is home to a state park that has an observatory. So it's actually a state of Washington park, and it's an observatory. And Goldendale itself tries to minimize the light pollution that comes from the town. It's not a very big town in any case, so there's not a lot of light pollution. But that it's another kind of unique part about the area.
Yeah, that sounds. It really sounds like you found like you mentioned, Christopher, the ideal location here.
Yeah, it took some doing. The problems of being too close in were the prices of the land were much higher, and the HOAs were stifling, and the sky wasn't as dark. But so it's worth going out. The land was very cheap back then, and we did. The sky was much darker, and it was just worth it. There are no regulations, or very few people telling you what to do around there. So we could build our roads and get on with it. Yeah.
So I'm curious. You mentioned being an LLC, so that's like an incorporated entity of some sort of, I believe.
Right, for profit. Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, versus like some of the other sky villages where I believe, I really don't know. So with the other sky villages that you looked at, do they do the same thing, or do they sell lots, or are they incorporated differently? I'm just wondering. This is a little bit different than how I thought these sort of things might be set up.
Right. Well, I've really looked at other sky villages, and I haven't really found anything like it anywhere. Because if you look at the Arizona Sky Village in Portal, Arizona, and I've been there, and I've talked to Jack Newton, who started the place. It's more like a housing estate with houses on 2-acre plots, and it's ownership of the plots, and that's true for a place in Georgia called the Deer Lick Observatory, I think.
Yep.
They have the same thing sort of there. And if you go around all the various different sort of observing places or dark sky sites around the country, there's nothing really that's equivalent to this. And what's really important to me about having a sky village like this with small lots close to each other is to help people like me who have terrible time trying to, image and need help. Because I can't if you're out by yourself somewhere in the dark, you get stuck. I mean, that's the end of the observing night for you.
Mm-hmm.
But by having a lot of people together in relatively close to each other, you can get help when you need it, whenever you get stuck, and it's so important for not only education but also for socializing. Everybody knows each other at Goldendale. It's like a little community, a big family, if you like, So
So it sounds sounding like it's a little bit more communal in its organizational structure. Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty cool. Very
it
neat.
also is also much less expensive.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I guess you don't have to buy the plots; you're just buying those shares. I imagine a plot of land in Portal, Arizona, could be rather expensive for a couple acres.
Yes, exactly. And there
Hmm.
are people and members who've told me that they could never have afforded to build an observatory like they built at Goldendale if they'd had to have their own land. They would have put all their money into the land, and not what they really want is the observatory. So
Yeah, yeah, I can appreciate that. That's how I end up getting my dark sky site. We bought a cabin, my wife and I together, but my original plan was just like you're mentioning. My original plan was to go out and try to find a small piece of land, but it's a catch 22. You buy the land and now you can't afford to put anything on it, right? So then it's
yeah,
sort of like, yeah, it's a bit of a catch 22, I guess.
and owning land is a headache too because you've got taxes,
Taxes.
you've got regulations, you've got this, that, and the other. You
Yeah.
know, everyone's fighting over every square inch, whereas at Goldendale, you don't own the land. So, what's it matter if you don't know exactly where the perimeter of your lot is?
Yeah.
It really sounds like a star party that is just never ending. It's it's always on.
Exactly. A permanent star party. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And what I really enjoy too about that concept is, um, I think astronomy can be viewed as a solo endeavor, you and your telescope under the stars. But it's, for me anyway, it's far more enjoyable when there's three or four other people around me looking at the stars with their telescopes, and that socialization that you referred to is really enjoyable. It's fun to be able to talk to people. It makes me stay out later, and I like looking through other people's telescopes too, just to see what they're chasing down that night. So having those like-minded folks around would be really enjoyable.
Yeah, that's what it works that way at our village. Yeah. We have groups that hang out together in various areas. Yeah.
So speaking of which, how many current I guess, yeah, individual shareholders do you have?
We have 65.
That's pretty
Uh,
decent.
yeah. Well, we went from 21 to 65 over 5 years. And we have 67 lots, and we're running out of lots. We only got a handful left.
Wow. So when those are gone, is that kind of like Goldendale then, is at capacity, or is there potential for expansion?
We've been exploring that very issue very closely, and what my plan is, in fact, I've already done it, is establish a new LLC just down the road uh, called Starfield Sky Village. And we haven't got the land yet, but the owner of the land said he's willing to sell. We're just trying to get organized about, getting it together. But it's kind of like a dark sky home for everybody who missed the opportunity to become members of Goldendale Sky Village.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this term of a sky village is sort of new to me. I really, until Chris and I started doing the podcast, I guess close to 3 years ago now. That's when some of our listeners would write in and tell us about these sky villages, was the first awareness that came my way. And I just think it's a fascinating concept. And if we had anything similar near Regina, Saskatchewan, I'd certainly be a part of it.
Well, I can put a plug in for another for the Chiricahua Sky Village because that we formed that a couple of years ago. It's 92 acres under Bortle One Skies, about 100 miles southeast of Tucson, and I put it together for the purpose of people shivering in Canada with cloudy skies, with no hope of seeing any stars anytime before the following summer,
Yeah.
For people who live under adverse conditions in winter to travel to Arizona and have a place they can observe from. It's exactly the same setup as Goldendale Sky Village, the same rules, the same share concept, and so forth. It has 45 members. As soon as we put it together, like half the members of Goldendale Sky Village became members of the Chiricahua Sky Village because they like the idea of being able to escape the Pacific Northwest in winter to observe. Bill is also a member of the Chiricahua Sky Village. He's been down. Why don't you tell him about your experience when you went down to Chiricahua, what you told me when you were down there?
Well, certainly if you're looking to get away from freezing winters in Saskatchewan, it's also cold in the winter in Arizona at night in the desert. But I actually drove down last March, and we actually had a dark sky festival, if you will, where a number of the members showed up at Chiricahua Sky Village. And I was just amazed at the skies. There were two things that were remarkable about it. First of all, it's far south. It's almost to the Mexican border of the U.S. And the second is, as Christopher was saying, the Bortle 1 skies. There's virtually no sky glow in any place around. I can't remember ever visually observing the Crab Nebula, for example, M1. And it was spectacular through my little 8-inch scope down there. So I was definitely sold until I crawled into my sleeping bag at night, and it was a little bit cold. So you've got to be sure. This again is in March. Got to be sure to be prepared for that.
Bill, what would the overnight temperatures be there?
It was freezing. It was
wow.
zero Celsius.
Yeah, okay.
But it wasn't lower than that. I know, Chris, Beckett, on your one of your previous podcasts, you talked about observing to -20, which would be way too cold for me, I believe.
Well, and observing at -20 is doable when you have a heated house next door, steps away. If you're in a sleeping bag, -20 is pretty difficult.
But one of the things that Christopher has done with Chiricahua Sky Village is we've actually got a plot of land down there now that's got power to it, electricity, which is not true at Goldendale. At Goldendale, it's you have to bring your own power, which actually most members probably prefer, is using their own solar panels or using a communal solar panel for power.
One nice thing about a lack of power is then that translates into a lack of lights. And anytime you bring in some of these conveniences, you start to just almost through attrition lose some of that night sky. Like one of our favorite places near here is Grasslands National Park, and we were going there well before, at least for the East Block, well before they did any serious development of the park, and it was an incredible place. And over the years, they built out more sites, they added power to the sites, and they made it more accessible. But with that comes a little more light at night, and it can be somewhat frustrating at times. So I do have an appreciation for some rusticness in these locations.
Well, I'd like to say that we've been going 5 years now, and we really haven't missed grid electricity. Some members have. They would like to do some remote imaging. It's a little hard to do it without the grid connection, but we haven't really. Most people have solar panels, and then the other thing, surprisingly, if we haven't missed, is water. I mean, we bring our own water. We don't need a well, really. I mean, some people would like to have a well. Having said that, but we've done pretty well without water, and so we kind of like a real sky village, and we get our internet from the sky, we get our photons from the sky, we get our electricity from the sky, we get our water from the sky. It's a good feeling.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. I also love on your website here for Goldendale the hangout with fellow photon heads in the red light lounge. I love that. Photon
Oh,
heads
you
is
wouldn't
great.
notice that. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to put Red Light Lounge into the article in the magazine because people might get the wrong idea about
uh,
what it meant. But
I guess, yeah.
they crossed that part out.
That's hilarious.
But we do have a red light lounge. Yes, it's where people meet together and socialize, either when it's cloudy or before it gets dark. We have had potlucks every month there,
Hmm.
and we really get to know each other. We network, we teach each other, we learn from each other. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, you mentioned there's over 60 members on a given weekend. What's the, I don't know what the right word is, kind of occupancy percentage? Like, do the vast majority of people show up if it's a clear weekend in the forecast?
I don't know, Bill. What do you think? I don't think it's gotten over 50%.
Hmm.
The most people we've ever had there then for a potluck was about 50 or 60 people. You know. But
And
the funny thing is that it doesn't feel crowded at all. In 30 acres, they all disappear, and
Yeah.
and you can't see them behind the bushes and stuff with their telescopes. Doesn't feel crowded, no.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
50 and 60 includes spouse and kids and sometimes others as well, for a potluck. But like my particular spot, there's scrub oak and small ponderosa pine, which pretty much shield it from other lots. But on the other hand, one of the things I like about it that Christopher mentioned earlier is other members will just kind of walk through and we'll chat, or I can walk nearby and chat with people, like you were saying, Shane, look through other people's scopes at night. So it's relatively easy to get around. It's so dark that one of the members has put small stones that glow in the dark on the roads, so you can actually walk on the roads at night,
Hmm.
which is enormously helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Very interesting.
a couple of other things that Bill was talking about made me think of members don't just include. I mean, it's the observers and their families. Their immediate families are all considered members, and their children, obviously, and grandchildren. And members can bring guests too, as long as they're there to be their host. They can bring whoever they want to observe with them from the outside. You know.
That's what I was going to ask, especially since I'm frantically looking at the Chiricahua Sky Village here,
Yeah.
which I was familiar with before. I think I was familiar with that one before, but not Goldendale. And I was curious to find out if those of us who do suffer under the sometimes minus 40-degree temperatures can actually come down and visit. Because I have been chatting to one of the members, or one of the LLC share owners at the Chiricahua Sky Village, and I was like, "Oh, that would be really cool, just to come down even and visit, perhaps
Well,
become a future member myself." I don't know.
well, if I'm there, I go down about once a year or so. But if I'm there or Bill's there, you're welcome to come and observe down there with me. That's one of the nice things.
So it's just a matter of connecting with one of the members, I
Yeah,
suppose.
Bill can't tell you, for example, just go on down to Chiricahua, use my lot down there. You can stay there a month or
Yeah,
two, the whole
yeah, I
winter.
can understand that. You need to have some sort of
Yeah,
controls on who's
Yeah.
coming and going. Yeah,
right. Because it's important that everybody knows everybody else,
yeah.
and that's the way it works.
Yeah, this is a fantastic deal. I remember it. It reminds me years ago of when there was an astronomy organization and they did something similar. But yeah, at that those kind of pricing levels, it is just a phenomenal deal. Knowing how much even land goes for around here at the cheapest prices. That's what you're into, is basically the absolute cheapest prices for land, while at the same time getting the best astronomy skies. I'm curious to find out, when you're picking these sites, Christopher, how much does weather play into effect? Is it the fact that there are, in both these locations, I know there's other astronomical facilities, observatories and such within a handful of miles from these locations. How does weather and nearby astronomical facilities play into the selection of these locations?
We're it had a big part to play in selection of a Chiricahua site because we're only a mile from the Chiricahua Astronomy Complex that's owned and operated by the Tucson Club.
Hmm.
And that place is just truly amazing. We've been on tours of that, and they've raised. They're different though because they're a nonprofit, so they have to depend on donations to a large degree, whereas we don't.
Hmm.
But they've raised a lot of money and have built the most state of the art dark sky site you can imagine. And so we knew we couldn't go far wrong if we set up shop just a mile down the road from them, which in the Arizona desert is practically next doors. I mean, it
Yeah.
is next doors, you know. So that played a part. The other thing that we chose the west of the Chiricahua Mountains is because it's closer to the Tucson International Airport.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's an hour shorter drive from the airport to the dark sky site. And I figured that might make a difference for people flying in from the rest of the country. We have members from 6 different states down in Arizona now. So some of them travel a long way to get there.
Any Canadians so far that you know of, or
A couple of nibbles, but no
yeah,
one's bitten. No one's taken the hook yet. But yeah, we had someone very interested in Calgary who wanted to come, but didn't work out.
maybe after this podcast?
Yeah, well,
I can see Shane is like writing the check right now. Right?
Pretty
I mean,
much. Yeah.
the Chiricahua is meant for people like you. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it was put there so people can come there from the can break their their depression. You know, their midwinter cloud depression and come and visit the sunny skies of Arizona.
Yeah, I was looking at flights. Because I was thinking about going to the what is it called? The Winter Star Party down in Florida. But to get to Florida from Saskatchewan is basically almost $1,000 or 1,000 Canadian dollars. But to get down to Arizona can be as low as $175. So it's pretty significant difference. I was like, oh, like, a couple trips and, you could buy your shares there, Shane.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
right. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Hey, quick question just on the facility. Like I'm thinking about, when we go down, like Shane mentioned, we go down to the grasslands, kind of sounds like something kind of sort of similar, except more on a permanent basis. We're pretty accustomed to kind of being self-sustaining. So do you have like washroom facilities or anything of that nature on site, like porta potties or outhouses or latrines, or what are there for facilities at both Goldendale and the Chiricahua?
Bill, you can address that if you want to.
One of the things about Goldendale that's nice is there's actually a team of folks who work together on various parts. So there's essentially a sanitation engineer who's led the village into building a double vault toilet.
Okay.
It's not there. There doesn't have to be a drain field for it. It's pumped out by a local contractor once a year. And there's also porta potties in the summer that are placed elsewhere in the village.
Okay.
Another member has taken on the responsibility of working with local contractor to build the roads. So there are roads throughout Goldendale. And that local contractor is also available. I engaged him to build a concrete pad for my area, as well as to level it, to put in a gravel pad. And many other members have done that as well. So there's a whole team of folks who work to on the village and on some of the amenities.
Huh.
To expand on that point for a second, everybody has a skill. Every member has a part to play in the success of the village, and they have a stake in it. So it's in their interest to ensure its success. And so we all come from different walks of life, and we have people who are contractors, engineers, Boeing people, tech people to help set up, the Wi-Fi network and things like that. And we have a retired firefighter who acts as our fire marshal, which is
That's handy.
really important thing. I mean, we all sort of pitch in and help using our different backgrounds to to make it a success.
That's
That's
really
wonderful.
cool.
Yeah, just a true community. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you
I'd
have
also add that decisions are made by a vote. So one of the things that I did is I did a survey of members about things like water and electricity, and those surveys help inform where we want to go next. But we've had some issues with pine beetles and some of the ponderosa pines, and but we took a vote to spend the funds of the village on actually removal of the trees, or to spend the funds of the village on road construction and the double vault toilet construction.
very
Is
neat?
there any potential for ongoing fees or one-time fees to build infrastructure or cover maintenance costs or things of that nature?
Yes.
Yeah.
We managed for the last 5 years not to have any dues, but we're
Mhm.
now, since we're running out of land, we're not able to sell, limitless shares. So that's the way we've been raising funds up until now. But we will be pretty soon be starting pretty, affordable annual dues just for maintenance.
Mhm.
We don't have any big capital construction projects to do, but just paying for maintenance of the gravel roads and porta sanitation and things like taxes, and which are very low, but liability insurance and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if somebody wants, they can buy their shares while quantities last, and they could put something like a small roll off and a camper trailer or something like that on their lot if they so desired. Would that be acceptable? Is that kind of the status quo, or
Oh
what
yeah,
is? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Everybody's building something.
Yeah.
See, I mean, a lot of people are. Bill put an observatory on his, a domed observatory. Right next door, there's another one. There's a roll-off roof. Shelter cabins are very popular because that way you can stay warm in adverse conditions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And actually, my observatory was manufactured in Canada.
Okay.
Guy said Pod
Yeah.
out of believe Ontario, correct?
Yeah. He's just outside of London, Ontario. There.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And there's roll-off observatories. There's actually observatories that are pretty comparable to a one that you'd find in a small college.
Huh?
Again, for the particular person I'm thinking of, there is interested in remote imaging, so we'll have a solar array and actually control the plane wave telescope remotely.
Well, and then would some people just come out and simply be like, "Hey, I don't need anything fancy. I'm just going to camp and throw up a tent and bring their big dog or whatever," and that's how they spend all their new moon weekends in the summer, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another feature of Goldendale is it's got a large grassy area. I mean, again, it's scrub pine, scrub oak, and ponderosa pine. A large grassy area called a portal, suitable for star parties, or for doing just what you said, Chris. Bringing out scopes. You see them every dark new moon weekend.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
when I was watching, I watched the video that was on the website, and I noticed that one thing that kind of struck me about the Goldendale Sky Village is that it seemed, at least to me from the video, that outreach plays some sort of central role to it. Can either of you speak about the outreach that is going on there, and what's planned for public outreach at this location?
Yeah, I can address that. Basically, what we've done is create a nonprofit called Star Trek Academy.
Okay.
And our nonprofit a couple of years ago became affiliated with the Seattle Mountaineers,
Oh, okay.
which is a large group, you may have heard of them, of outdoors type people who 15,000 of them in the Seattle area, and and we started giving classes on basic telescope and red light discipline in Seattle at their headquarters. And then we'd bring those classes, once they've sort of qualified, we'd bring them out to Goldendale Sky Village, and they would stay on the portal. And a whole bunch of several members would hang out with them and show them stuff through the telescope. So that's one thing we've done. We're not doing it right now because we're looking for a CEO to organize it because it takes a lot of organizing. But that's one thing. And the other thing we've done is we've one of our members is a high school teacher, and he brings his science class out every year. They get in the school bus and they come out and they set up on the portal and they hang out. Those are very gratifying nights when they get there because they learn so much. They're so enthusiastic. So that's what we've been doing. It's not like the Tucson Club, though. It's not it's an LLC, Goldendale. Its primary mission is to provide dark sky to its members, but we're doing as much outreach as we can on the side, because people like doing it. It's a lot of fun.
I'd also mention that we've talked a lot about Seattle and people from Seattle being there, but we've also got a number of members, Christopher probably can tell, from Portland, from the Rose City astronomers in Portland, Oregon. It's at least as easy to get to Goldendale from Portland as it is to get to Goldendale from Seattle.
Yeah, it's actually only 2.5 hours from Portland, so it's closer. It's an hour closer, but a third of our members are from Oregon.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the map here. It's not. I spent a summer at Mount Hood, and I was like, oh, that's when I was trying to figure out if I've been through Goldendale.
We have a nice view of Mount Hood from our village.
I bet.
Yeah, there's a hill at the north end of our village. If you go up that, there's a spectacular view of Mount Hood.
Yeah, I'm kind of distracted as we're doing this because I keep Googling all these different locations and places as we're chatting here. But yeah, it looks like a beautiful spot, and that's very interior to the west coast there. So I imagine you get some fairly dry, persistent conditions. What are the conditions typically like in that area in the summer and in the winter?
Well, in the summer it can get pretty hot, like anywhere. But the observing season this summer, the skies are clear for most of those months. In the winter, it gets pretty darn cold. I was there last weekend. It went down to 16, which is Fahrenheit, which is cold for me. But last year we had 3 feet of snow dumped on the village in a day or two, which paralyzed the whole county. So,
Yeah.
But usually you can get access. It's just the clouds that are a problem in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're at about just above 45 degrees north latitude there, which is essentially the same latitude where I'm from, and it sounds like your winters might be fairly similar.
But the natural beauty of the area is stunning. We've got all these volcanoes. You can go down the road and you can see like 4 or 5 volcanoes around you, big white volcanoes, and the prairie there is just lovely. The wildlife is spectacular. It's just totally unspoiled. It's a gorgeous place.
One of our members actually caught a cougar walking through the village on a webcam recently.
Wow. Yeah, the photos are beautiful on the website here. I'm just scrolling through them right now, and very picturesque. And as you described, Christopher, lots of just natural beauty.
Well, some people just go there, even if it is cloudy, to get away from the metropolis.
Yeah.
Sure. To go and unwind. They don't even. Last time I went, I didn't even take my telescope. I just went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get into the country for some fresh air.
Do you have a cabin set up there, Christopher, or what's your setup like there currently?
I have a 120 square foot cedar cabin, and it's got a deck and a porch for the entrance. I've got a shed in the back, and I've got an outdoor hot water shower, which is gorgeous, wonderful. Because it gets pretty badly needed when you're down there.
I can imagine.
Sure.
So I have inside, I have a wood stove and air conditioning, and on the roof I have solar panels. So
Nice. And do you do water collection there for the shower, or how do you?
I bring it in a jerry can, but
Yeah.
we do have water collection at another place. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's really neat. See by Shane's message to me there, we're getting to about the 50 minute mark. There's no rush for us to wrap up, but yeah, I'm just curious. So, Bill, you're a member. What are your impressions of both Chiricahua as well as the Goldendale facilities? Have they met your expectations? It sounds like.
Oh, far exceeded my expectations. Again, I live in Seattle, which has at best probably I live in actually in the city of Seattle, Bortle 7 skies. And as I look to the east, which is downtown Seattle, it's probably Bortle 8. And so you don't do it. You can do visual observing. You actually do a lot of visual observing, obviously, but you're not going to do much good imaging. So going to Goldendale is a blessing. The skies are just spectacular, as well as it's a little further south to catch like Scorpius and Sagittarius in the winter. Chiricahua I've only been to once. There's no there aren't trees there. There's a lot of vegetation, but there aren't really trees, so it's a lot more open.
Yeah.
And of course,
We're just breaking up there for a second. Not sure what's happening there. We'll just give it a moment.
my internet is unstable.
Yeah, that can happen. So you're saying it sounds like it's working its way out there. Sorry about that, Bill. Continue. You were saying there's a different type of vegetation there at Chiricahua.
Yes, but you're much further south in Arizona, so you get and without the vegetation, you've got a virtually clear view of the sky.
Nice. Very nice. So, Christopher, it sounds like you've gotten two, possibly three of these ventures off the ground. Is that kind of your plans for the future? Is to keep developing more sites like this for an affordable way for amateur astronomers like us to get access to permanent dark skies? I think this is a really great service and an idea that you've come up with. I had no idea it was so affordable. Actually, this is kind of almost shocking in a way. I didn't read any of that in my research or didn't absorb for some reason.
Well, I would like to see other sky villages based on this model, pop up around the country. There was a group in the Bay Area of California who were interested in doing something like this because they heard about it going on, but the land prices were really high there, so they've been having problems finding a good site for them. And someone mentioned maybe something in Colorado. I personally won't be, be in California or Colorado setting one up because I've got a day job. I have to, show up every day. And but I'm more interested in developing the Goldendale Sky Village area. Like, for example, right now, our latest thing is potentially finding a permanent dark sky home for the Seattle Astronomical Society, which is basically how it started back in 2016, how this whole thing started. And also for the Rose City astronomers, because neither club, they're big clubs, and neither have a permanent dark sky home. And so I'm kind of working on that to find something like that close to Goldendale Sky Village, bringing people together, so that's what I'm working on.
Cool. Well, very nice. So, Christopher, if anybody's interested in either of these locations, what would be the best way for them to find out more? Just go to the website, or
go to the website and send a message. There's a thing at the bottom where you can message Goldendale. I usually respond pretty rapidly. Got someone last night who sent a message to me about Goldendale, and I responded about 1 o'clock in the morning. So I respond pretty quickly and just do it that way. And the same for Chiricahua.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And Bill, thanks so much for lining this up. It was your prompting that kind of led us to have this conversation. I thought it was a really neat idea. We've never talked about any of the sky villages, and now we've exposed ourselves and our listeners to really some of the great details on what's happening and how people might be able to get involved for themselves. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Chris and Shane, for doing the podcast. Not just this one, but
I think Bill is unfortunately breaking up again.
On 365 now, I think, right? Podcast.
Yeah, I think this is going to be 372.
Thank you so much, Chris and Shane. Yep.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks so much, Bill. Unfortunately, we're just having a little bit of a technical issue with Bill here at the end. Shane, do you have anything left to add before we conclude?
Yeah, just would like to say thanks. This was wonderful. This is a concept that I had awareness of, but certainly did not know the details. And I think that this is just a wonderful thing for astronomers. And to your point, Christopher, I really hope a number of other ones become established, and not just in the US, but all over the place, because I think there's a lot of benefit for people like us that just like to be under dark skies.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, perhaps we'll conclude here. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody for listening. If you have any show ideas, questions, or want to send in your observing reports, you can reach us at actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.